Okay, so for this mission, we're going to be adding integers with the same sign. So can anyone define what an integer is? Or does anybody know what an integer is? Eric?
An integer is just something with an absolute value.
Not quite. Good guess. Does anybody else want to take a guess as to what an integer is? Eli? Okay. Look, kind of glance through these notes. See if you look at these numbers that are involved in these notes, can you decipher what an integer might be? Jonah?
An equation with positive and negative numbers.
Okay, maybe it's an equation with positive and negative numbers. That's a good guess. Does anybody have another guess? Kevin? Bingo. A number has to be whole. Okay, but more specifically, what kind of number? Obviously a whole number. Eric?
A negative whole number.
Negative whole number or
Positive.
a positive whole number. Exactly. So an integer is just all of our positive and negative whole numbers. So basically, it's the numbers that you see on a number line. Okay, all of the negative numbers, all of the positive numbers, 0 is included as an integer. And today we're going to look at adding those integers together when they have the same sign. Now, obviously, you guys are pros at adding positive numbers. You've been doing that since first grade and kindergarten, right? Adding 5 plus 5, adding 27 plus 13, so you guys are used to adding those whole numbers. In 7th grade, we start to introduce, and you saw a little bit of it in 6th grade, starting to introduce those negative numbers. So negative 5 plus negative 5, negative 17 plus negative 27, and seeing how those negative numbers affect the overall total. So I like to start off this, like I said, this is going to seem really elementary and kind of why are we doing this? Because it's going to seem very easy, all right? But I like to show it this way first, so when we get into subtracting and then opposite signs, you guys are really familiar with the easy stuff, okay? So you can't see it because the copier only did black and white, but these lighter color chips are yellow on the color copies, and then the darker colored chips are red on the color copies, okay? So basically, I'm going to use these colored chips to represent positive and negative integers, okay? So the yellow chips are going to count as positive 1. The red chips are going to count as negative 1, okay? So an easy one to start with is 3 plus 4. So if I have 3 positive counters and 4 positive counters, how many counters is that total? 7. Okay. And what is the sum of 3 plus 4? 7. Okay. And so you can show that, again, they've got the diagram here, but you can show it, 3 chips, 3 positive chips, plus 4 positive chips, and when you're first learning how to count and add, you might count them all together. 1, 2, 3 plus 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so easy. When we start to get into negative numbers, though, so let's say we had 2 red chips or 2 negative chips plus 3 negative chips. How would that differ from positive 2 plus positive 3? What do you think our answer would be from negative 2 plus negative 3? Joni, you want to take a guess?
I think it would be maybe negative 1 because
Okay.
if you add negative 2, which is greater than negative 3, and then that means you would take 2 away from negative 3, which would make it negative 1.
Okay, that's a good guess. Are we adding these or subtracting them? We're adding them together. Okay, so we wouldn't want to take anything away necessarily. You want to take a guess, Jacob? So when you have two negatives, he's exactly right. When you're adding two negatives together, okay, -2 plus -3, how many total negatives are there? 5. So adding negatives when they are both negative is just the same as adding two positives together. Your answer is just going to be a negative value. Okay, so on your paper, it gives the example of -5, so 5 negative counters, plus -3, 3 negative counters. So how many counters are there in total? 8. And since the counters are negative, what would the sum be? -8. So -5 plus -3 equals -8. So when you add two numbers with the same sign, what sign are you going to use for the answer? Same sign, the sign of the numbers. The sign of the original numbers. So let's practice a couple more. Okay, +1 plus +2. What would that equal? Toby? 3. -1 plus -2. What would that equal? Oh, come on, I know more than one person knows this. -1 plus -2. How many total do we have? And then look at the sign with it. Autumn? -3. So all total we have 3 negative chips. What about 2, +2 plus +2? Eric? +4. What about -3 plus -3? What would that be? Paige? -6. That's correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they are negative, so it would be a negative sum. What about +3 plus 1? +3 plus 1. Riley? 4. Positive ones are super easy. How about -5 plus -4? -5 plus -4. Olivia? -9. So altogether there are 9 chips, and since they're negative, it would be a -9. Okay, so you guys are pretty good at those. Now yesterday you did a Zern lesson of introducing integers, and they used a thermometer to show kind of the number lines and show positive numbers means warmer temperatures, negative numbers means colder temperatures. And so this one is kind of going to review that, and that way you have it on paper. So looking at this thermometer, if the temperature was 2 degrees Fahrenheit below 0, and then the temperature drops by 5 degrees, what is the temperature now? So it shows the thermometer has a current temperature of -2 degrees Fahrenheit. So what is the initial temperature written as an integer, Jacob? -2. So we're starting at -2 degrees. That's what it felt like this morning, I can tell you right now. It was cold. So where would that be on our number line? Where would we mark that on our number line? Macy? At the -2 spot. Okay, so we always start with 0, and we would go down to the -2 spot. Okay. So there's our initial temperature, -2. And then we drop in temperature by 5 degrees. So which direction on the thermometer would the line be going? Braylon? Be going down. A drop in temperature means the temperature gets colder. So we're going to drop 5 degrees. So starting at the -2, we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees. So a drop in temperature is like adding a -5. So if this is -2 and this is -5 and we add them together, what would our current temperature be? -7. And is that above or below 0? Below 0. So we could show that in an integer, or in a not a word problem. What am I trying to say? An expression. We can show this in an expression, and we would just say that we started at -2, and then we added -5. And that gives us our final temperature of -7. Yes, sir.
Can you add positive number to a negative number?
Yes, and we're going to do that tomorrow. So number 2, suppose the temperature is -1 degree and it drops by 3 degrees. So instead of having you guys explain it in words, we're just going to draw the number line for that. So use the top line here to draw your number line. Okay, so if we're at 0 to start with, negatives, remember, they're to the left. And then our positives are to the right. So if the temperature is currently -1 degree, so that's going to go from 0 to -1 to show your initial temperature. And then it drops by 3 degrees. Which way would we go on our number line? Left or right? Left, because we're getting colder, and so we need to go to the left on the number line by 3 degrees. So we go 1, 2, 3. So how cold is it now? -4 degrees. So -1 dropping 3 degrees equals -4. I want you to draw a number line for number 3, and you're going to have 2 different math problems on it. 2 plus 5, and then -2 plus -5. So I want you to draw your number line, and again, you can use the line here just like we did on number 2. Now I want you to show them to show how they are going to differ from one another. And I've got to grab my charger. Okay. So on your number line, you should have 2 different sets of arrows. Because in the first set, we're going from, we're adding 2 plus 5. So that's going to be in the positive direction. Okay, so we start at 0, we go to 2 for our initial value, and then we add 5 to that. So we're going to go up by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So where did we end up? 7. Easy. 2 plus 5 equals 7. Okay? So how is that going to be different from -2 plus -5? How does that look different than -2 plus -5? Jacob? Okay, it's negatives and not positives. So that changes the directions of our arrows, because we're going to be going in the negative direction. And what does it do to our answer? What does that do to our answer? It's going to be a negative answer. So -2 plus -5, start at 0 and go to -2 for that initial value. And then add -5. So we're going to add 5 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And where do we end up? -7. All right, number 4. What are 2 other negative integers that have the same sum as -2 and -5? Eli? Okay, -3 plus -4. Okay, and you can reverse that, -4 plus -3. What else? Jacob? -6 plus -1. And again, you can reverse that, -1 plus -6. So yeah, two negative numbers add together to equal -7. Jonah. -7 plus 0, so I would partially agree with that. Yes, they have a sum of 7, but this is asking for 2 negative integers, and 0 is not a negative integer. It's actually the only integer that's not negative or positive. It just is its own thing. But yes, -7 plus 0 would also equal -7.
Why do you put parentheses on the second?
That's a good question. So negative numbers look a lot like subtraction signs. And so just to clean it up and to kind of say, hey, this is -4, this isn't -4. And it's not as necessary right now because you've got pluses and minuses or addition and negatives. But like when we get into subtracting negatives, it's going to look really confusing if you have 6 minus -2. Because then you'd have 2 negatives right next to each other. So we like to put that in parentheses to kind of clean it up and say, hey, these 2 things go together. Good question. All right. So on the next page, it kind of summarizes everything up. To add integers with the same sign, you're going to add the absolute values, which just means add the numbers, and then use the sign of the integers for the sum. So you're going to add your values together and then carry that sign over to your answer. Okay. Cross out just example number 1. Don't cross out where it says your turn. Just cross out example number 1. I think that kind of gets a little confusing writing it with absolute values and all of that stuff. So we'll just skip that part. So let's practice these. Hopefully you can do most of them using mental math, but if you need to write out vertically any of the problems to add, that's okay too. Number 7, -8 plus -1. Raise your hand and tell me what that sum would be. Grant? -9 is correct. 8 plus 1 is 9, and then carry the negative. -3 plus -7. -3 plus -7. Eric?
Wait, -10.
Good. -10. -48 plus -12. What would that one be? Paige? Good. -60. 48 plus 12 is 60, and then carry the negative over. Number 10, -32 plus -38. Eli? Good. -70. Yes. Number 11, 109 plus 191. Jonah?
That was 300.
300. A positive and a positive makes a positive. Number 12, we have negative 40 plus negative 105. Negative 40 plus negative 105, you put that calculator away. Busted. Paige, what did you get for your answer? Negative 145. Number 13, now on this one, if you need to set up a vertical addition, you can. That helps you to see it like this. You can add them together like that and then just carry your negative to the answer. Okay? Jacob, what'd you get for number 13?
Negative 1,650.
Very good. And then negative 200 plus negative 800. Olivia? Negative 1,000. Very good. Any questions on 7 through 14? All right, turn over to the back page. So you are going to, with your shoulder partner, so that's the person seated right next to you. Now, Autumn and Beckham, you guys are shoulder partners even though you're not next to each other. So one of you can just move to the other one. So you're going to do 1 through 17 on this guided practice, okay? And I want to specify for number 3, I do want you to use the number line, okay? I know right now it seems kind of silly to show these on a number line, but it's really going to help you when we start adding and subtracting with different signs. Okay, so get used to it with the easy stuff. That way, when we get to more difficult problems, it's still pretty easy. Okay? So do 1 through 17 with your shoulder partner, and then when you're done with that, you can come up and check it with my answer key, and then you will get the homework to work on in class. I had quite a few people second period that got the homework done because they used their time wisely. All right? Are there any questions on that? Any questions on adding integers today? Okay, go ahead and start on the guided practice and let me know if you need help. Work with your shoulder partner.